Hi there, my name is Sheila Mulvaney and I'm just recording a quick video that I will post on my website to go with a sheet I've done which is basically some tips on maintaining mental well-being. So this is all about maintaining mental well-being rather than treating specific mental health problems. It's just important to make that distinction. Mental well-being is all about how we feel and about how we take responsibility for how we feel. So this is aimed really at people who are well and how to keep well both mentally and physically, because they are in fact intertwined. We talk about mental well-being, but what we know is that our mental and physical well-being are very much interwoven. We are whole people. We can't separate ourselves out into different parts. I'm only going to get one shot at recording this because I've been training all day today and I've got to go out to another event this evening, so I'm afraid there might be a few little mistakes in it and I won't have time to edit it probably. So what you see is what you get, but I hope you find it useful. This is to accompany my kind of cheat sheet that looks like this on maintaining mental well-being, and doing an action plan as well. So if you're serious about your own mental well-being and you want to take responsibility for it, you will get the chance to download that from the website and actually start thinking about what action you can take to make sure that you look after yourself and maintain your own mental well-being. So as I've said, physical and mental well-being are connected. So the first few things that I'm going to talk about in terms of maintaining your mental health are all about physical things. So the first is making sure you get the right fuel. We are bodies, we need fuel to give us energy, and by the fuel what I generally mean is food. Now there has been loads and loads of research and evidence about how food can impact us physically and mentally. It's not the time to go into a great long discussion about what makes a good diet. What I will say is a few simple things to follow are cutting back on processed foods. Basically, if you buy something that's already prepared, even if you look at the label, you can't be absolutely sure about what's in it in terms of the amounts, because a lot of us will be able to read the label, but actually how that translates in terms of whether it's too much fat, too much sugar, we might not be sure about. So basically, cut back on processed food. Make sure you get your 5 or even 7 a day portions of fruit and vegetables, and make sure that they are as varied in colour as they can be. On top of that, drink plenty of water, and if you're having carbohydrates, which we all need, and fibre, we all need, the more whole wheat, the less processed, the better. So they're just quite simple tips, but what we know is, and you've probably all done this, if you have a day when you kind of overdose a bit on junk food, you're busy, you haven't got time to cook a proper meal, you just end up snacking all day, actually it affects how we feel. It can affect our mood. We feel a bit sluggish, maybe a bit apathetic, and just not quite on top form really. So bear that in mind. And the other thing I've mentioned in there is one of the ways that we relieve stress is sometimes eating, sometimes eating things often that aren't that good for us. That's when we overdose on the old cookie dough ice cream, or we get chocolate bars and go through them, and of course it's when people might drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, or take drugs. All of those might well relieve stress, and as a short-term strategy, I'm not going to be the one to criticize you, but as a long-term strategy it's not like to be effective, and it will cause you other problems, so it's just not good to go down that route. The second thing that links very much with the fuel we put in is the energy we expend in terms of exercise. Almost everyone I know says they feel better when they've exercised. It's very hard getting through the door, but the act of exercise actually releases good things in our brain, happy hormones if you like, that make us feel better. So it's not a surprise that whilst you might feel exhausted, you generally feel better after you've exercised. Now I will give a rider of, obviously you've got to make sure you look after yourself, get the right equipment and that kind of thing. Any exercise, generally speaking, if it's not causing our body harm in terms of doing something that we know is difficult for our body, it's going to do us good. So whether it's walking or yoga or riding a bike, and if you can't fit in a lot of formal exercise, then make sure you do things like get off the bus and stop early, try and go up the stairs rather than the lift. But basically, you're important, looking after your health is important, so fitting in exercise is not a luxury, it's actually something that's very important. Obviously, if you do something you enjoy, you're more likely to do it, and if you do it with other people, a lot of people find that's easier. And then we go on to sleep. That's another physical one that's very important. If we've ever felt very, very tired, then we know that affects our mood. We just don't feel that good. We can easily feel low. We might feel quite tearful. So sleep is very important. I've put a link on the sheets to an article that tells you about how you can make, things you can do to make sure you get good quality sleep. We can all survive a few days not getting enough sleep, but if that becomes the norm, that can easily start to impact our mental well-being, as many of us who've been parents might be able to remember. Certainly for me it was a long time ago, but when you're woken up regularly, that does have a bit of an impact on you. So if you can try to make sure that you get a good night's sleep, you are standing yourself in good stead in terms of feeling well and maintaining your mental well-being. Now, another thing is routine. Now, this can sometimes be a bit of a contentious one, because lots of people will say to me if I see them for coaching or counselling that actually the routine is the thing they don't like. But there's a part of us as humans that seems to function better when we have a bit of a routine. So I'm not saying you need to be absolutely strict about it, but there's something about having set things that we do at set times that means that we often function better. Everyone deserves a holiday, but at the same time, a routine can be quite good for us. And one of the things that people find can be difficult about being ill is that actually they get out of routine. And if you think back to the last time you maybe skipped meals, skipped your exercise routine, it was probably those times when you weren't in a very good routine. Now, the next thing is about relationships. We are all individual. Some people actually enjoy time of their own. Well, I think everyone enjoys a bit of time on their own occasionally. Some people savour time on their own. Other people actually, after 2 hours on their own, they're climbing the walls and they want to be with other people. But the fact is, humans are social beings. We all need interaction. Now, there's just been a really big study done in the UK on loneliness, actually, by Radio 4, which you can look up. And one of the things we know is that people don't do well when they're isolated. Loneliness impacts massively our mental well-being. So make sure that you have people that you are in a relationship with. Now, that might be work colleagues, it might be a hobby, a club, a sport that you go to, but we need human contact. The amount we need might vary, so you've got to do a little bit of analysis about what works well for you. That's the kind of thing you can look at on the action planning sheet. But basically, we need to have interactions with other people. If you're not getting them via work, and that's something that a lot of small business owners find. If you're working at home, actually one of the main ways we get contact via work can be cut down, so often they need to build in other things. Okay, the next is positivity. Now, I'm not saying for a minute that someone has a mental health problem will be cured by having a positive outlook, because that is not the case. There are some very real mental health problems that need direct treatment by a medical professional. However, all of us do better if we kind of have a bit of a positive head on, and I've given you a link to a website where I regularly post kind of positive thoughts. The thing is, we get into habits in our thinking the way we get into habits in other things in life. So if you get used to thinking positively, if you get used to trying to see the good in a situation, to deciding quite consciously you're going to focus on the things that are positive rather than the things that are negative, that will ultimately bear fruit. So there's a link on the website. Do read some of the articles. There's also an Instagram account where I do post quite positive things most days for people that need a little bit of something to get them going in the morning. Then there is the idea that you need to prioritise yourself. I'm going to tell you now, you are important, you are worth looking after, and the number one person to look after you is you. So prioritise yourself, and that sometimes means learning to say no to all sorts of different things. It is not indulgent, it is not a luxury. If you don't look after yourself, very often there won't be enough other people to do it for you. You're worth prioritising. Heck, if you don't look after yourself, what does that say about how you value yourself? That doesn't mean we all have to become self-obsessed and only interested in us, but it does mean that there are times when we might say, actually, I'm not going to do that because I know I need a night on my own tonight. I know I need to go and see a friend tonight, so no, I can't stay late at work because I need to have a discussion, because I know that will help me in terms of my own mental well-being. So, and that also involves things like relaxing. Now, relaxing is something that some people seem to find harder to do than others. So if it's something you don't find easy, then look at some specific things that might help. Things like maybe sort of mindfulness or things like that, but whatever works for you, trying to find time to do that is really important. Now, the other side of that same coin is actually challenging ourselves. We can see this with children. Children often learn better and feel more positive when they are challenging themselves, when they're achieving something good, when they've got a sight of something that they want to get to. It's also a good idea to make sure that you have things to look forward to. These don't have to be big things, they can be relatively minor things, doing things you enjoy and that kind of thing, but make sure you fit them in. There's been a lot written and said about learning to live in the moment. We are happiest when we are not looking backwards over much, too much, and not looking forwards too much, even though I've just said looking forwards is important. But actually, when you think about what you worry about, what are the things that keep you awake in the night? It's not usually the present day, is it? It's usually things that have happened in the past or things you're worrying about in the future. So learning to live in the moment is really important, and one of the ways you can do that is by things like mindfulness, meditation, yoga. It's not something we do automatically, it's something we often have to train ourselves to do. So again, I've put some links on the sheet to some mindfulness exercises you can try. Lastly, we all need to work at developing our own personal resilience. We can get stronger mentally, just like exercise will help you get stronger physically. We can learn to get stronger emotionally by understanding the things that stress us, understanding the things that help us manage that stress. And that's worth giving a bit of time to. So think about that. I've also put a link to an article there. If you've got any questions, if there's anything that you feel isn't clear, then I'd love you to post those. I've given links to my websites on the sheet. And all I would say in finishing off is actually you are important. You must look after yourself. We all have a responsibility. It's easy to blame other people and say this happened because of this and that happened because of that. But actually, we can't control what happens in life. What we can control is how we respond to it. And so what we're saying today in the Mental Health and Mental Wellbeing Week is really take time to look after yourself. Many thanks.